All right, let's talk about a story a lot of men over 60 tell themselves. A story about strength, peace, and this hard-won independence. It starts with a belief that after a lifetime of obligations, being alone isn't a curse, it's a kingdom you've built for yourself. Today, we're going to tear that story down. We'll look at it through the eyes of a man, let's call him Arthur, who, like many of you, thought he had it all figured out. He was 65, a widower, and he was convinced he was thriving in solitude. He believed he didn't need a woman, and he was right. Until he discovered the harsh truth. His peace wasn't freedom. It was a fortress, and he was its only prisoner. By the end of this video, you'll understand the psychological trap of extreme independence and, most importantly, how to break free without sacrificing your strength. If this already sounds familiar, and you're ready to figure this out, do me a quick favor and hit that like and subscribe button. You won't want to miss where we go from here. Listen, maybe this sounds familiar. For 5 years after his wife passed, Arthur's life was all about self-sufficiency. His mornings were his own. Black coffee, newspaper, no one to answer to. Afternoons in the workshop. He chose this quiet, predictable peace over the messy drama of a social life. And this isn't a life of sadness, right? You tell yourself it's a life of order. Your house isn't empty. It's uncluttered. The silence isn't a void. It's where you can finally think. After decades of being a husband, a father, an employee, this independence feels like the ultimate prize. You're not lonely. You're free. I see this with so many of the men I work with. Retirement, divorce, or losing a spouse, it all leads to this place. And building this fortress of solitude isn't a sign of defeat. It's a survival strategy. It's a way to protect your peace. Arthur believed his fortress was unshakable and that he was happy inside it. He was a king in a castle he built, and he saw no reason to ever lower the drawbridge. He had everything he needed, or so he thought, and then something happens. It's never a big thing. It's small. A moving truck. A new neighbor. A woman. Around his age, Carol. Her acts of kindness were tiny. She brings his recycling bin in, leaves some tomatoes from her garden on his porch. A simple note. Too many for one person. He'd give a wave from the driveway. She'd wave back. And Arthur, true to form, was polite but distant. A quick thanks, a nod, and then he'd retreat right back into his fortress. These weren't unwelcome, but they were disruptions. Each little interaction was a ripple in the calm surface of his life. Here's the thing. He viewed her kindness with suspicion. In his world, every interaction is a kind of social debt. It's a messy web of obligation he'd spent years learning to avoid. It was just easier to keep the walls high. He was just waiting for the ripples to stop, for the quiet to return. But the quiet that came back, it wasn't the same. Before Carol, the silence in Arthur's house was comfortable. It was the sound of peace. But now, after a quick, warm exchange at the mailbox, the silence that hit him when he closed the front door felt loud. It wasn't a blanket anymore. It was a hollow echo in a house that suddenly felt way too big. He started noticing his own loneliness in these sharp, unexpected moments. Eating dinner alone, he'd remember her waving from her garden, and his plate would just feel solitary. He'd finish a project in his workshop and feel this urge to show it to someone. The quiet wasn't peace anymore. It felt like emptiness. This is a profound realization that hits so many men after 60. As your social circle shrinks, this deep-seated human need for connection starts screaming for attention. And it's not just about having someone around. It's about shared experiences, about feeling seen, about mutual respect. For a lot of men, their wife was their only real, deep connection. Without her, they're left with acquaintances, not true support. Arthur was starting to learn the difference between chosen solitude and unacknowledged loneliness. His independence, the thing he was so proud of, was starting to feel like a cage. He'd been so focused on not needing anyone that he never stopped to ask if he might simply want a connection. He wasn't a king in a castle. He was just a man, alone in a quiet house. And it's in that quiet that we confront the truths we've been running from. If you've ever had a moment of quiet that showed you what's really going on, comment clarity below. It's a powerful thing to finally see what's been there all along. The real wake-up call came on a Tuesday. A nasty cold had him down for the count week, shivering. The idea of driving to the pharmacy felt impossible. He was just sitting there, feeling miserable, when the doorbell rang. He opened the door to find a grocery bag on the mat. Inside, homemade chicken soup, orange juice, and cold medicine. A simple note from Carol. Heard you were under the weather. Hope this helps. No questions, no expectations. Just a simple, human act of kindness. As Arthur stood there, holding that warm soup, the walls of his fortress just crumbled. In that one moment, he was hit with the vulnerability he'd denied for 5 years. He prided himself on being self-reliant, but here was a problem he couldn't fix, and help just showed up. He'd spent years proving he didn't need anyone, only to feel overwhelming gratitude for the very connection he'd been pushing away. And that's when he understood the harsh truth. Now listen, because this is the critical part. The harsh truth wasn't that a man over 60 needs a woman. That's the lie society sells you. It's not about gender or romance or replacing his wife. The harsh truth is that cherished independence, when taken to its extreme, becomes a fortress that isolates you from a fundamental human need: connection. It's the realization that while you don't need someone to complete you absolutely need connection to feel alive. Paradoxically, and this is backed by decades of relationship psychology, the most successful and attractive men over 60 are the most independent, but they're independent from a place of fulfillment, not fear. They don't operate from neediness. They come from abundance. The best relationships after 60 are built on two whole people, choosing to share their lives. Arthur had the independence part right, but he'd mistaken it for the whole equation. His fierce self-reliance had become its own trap, a dependence on being needed by no one. A few days later, feeling better, Arthur saw Carol in her garden. For the last 5 years, he would have given a polite nod and kept walking, but something had shifted. The fortress door was unlocked. He walked over. "Carol," he started. She looked up and smiled. "That soup was a lifesaver. Thank you." He took a breath. "I was wondering, could I treat you to a coffee this week to say thank you properly?" It wasn't some big romantic move. It wasn't a declaration of need. It was simply opening a gate that had been locked for way too long. It was moving from a place of scarcity to a place of choice. So, do men over 60 really need women? The answer is a resounding no. A man doesn't need a woman to be whole or strong. Some of the happiest men I know are single by choice because their happiness comes from within. But yes, we all need connection. We need to be seen. We need to know that someone might bring us soup when we're sick. The real strength of a man over 60 isn't just in his independence. It's in his wisdom to know when to open the damn door. It's not about needing a woman. It's about having the courage to choose human connection, whatever form it takes. True strength is knowing that your peace isn't a fortress to hide in, but a garden to be shared. If this story hit home for you, do me a favor and hit that like button and share it with a man who needs to hear it. And make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications for more insights into life after 60. We all have a story, and we'd love to hear yours in the comments. Remember, you're not too old and it's not too late. You might just be operating from the wrong energy. Fix the energy, and everything else follows.